Okay, we are here on the SchmearCast podcast. I am rejoined by Sean Byrne, aka Modern Mythos. Sean, last week we got to talk to the cinematographer of Severance, the director of episode 7 of the second season, Chikai Bardo, that person being Jessica Lee Gagne. That was awesome. I just want to know from you, a week later, how'd you feel about that conversation? What were some of your favorite takeaways from it?
Yeah, that was one of the coolest things I've been able to do since starting this little movie, TV, content journey I've been on the last year or so. It's really hard to pull a single thing away from that. I think in how she was kind of talking about the visual language a little bit, but episode 7 specifically, I think how she said there was really everything they did is so hands-on. And she said she really got her to flex her muscles and use some of her favorite equipment for this, where otherwise she hadn't been able to do that. So the shot on Gemma's eyes and things like that, I just really love to find out the backstory.
Now we know what mole beam lights are too.
Yeah, you were sending me pictures of them. You're like, there they are. It's hell yeah, beautiful lights, beautiful lights.
I was just so impressed by her confidence. She's such a self-assured person, and
Yep.
It seems like any doubt that she perhaps had going into this, that Ben Stiller has been the exemplary mentor for getting that out of her. And they seem to have such an awesome relationship and collaboration that I just found inspiring to hear about. Because,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think we take for granted, not everyone's a good mentor, especially in filmmaking in Hollywood. And to hear that they are kind of providing what the other lacks to have this really great cohesion was really awesome to hear. And it seems like he helps her trust her instincts, and her instincts obviously are brilliant when you see an episode like this.
Agreed. She's masterful. I can't believe that was a debut.
Yeah. So the reception to Chikai Bardo online, a mix of euphoric elation and frustration with the actual content and how devastating the episode is, felt to me like a levees breaking moment when Twitter and TikTok actually take the time to know who the director of a TV episode is. I think that's when you know you've succeeded. What have you been seeing online about this episode and its reception?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Is I've saved a couple Jessica Lee Gagne memes on my phone.
Wow.
People doing the SpongeBob praying meme, and it's just Jessica Lee Gagne's name on the wall. It's just I can't believe that in her debut she's crushed it this much that on multiple social media apps I'm seeing her name pop up when I don't think usually film Twitter or TV Twitter could really name the cinematographer for their favorite show.
Or
so
even
I think
knows
that
what a cinematographer is.
very valid. And maybe that's what Severance is. Maybe Severance is that kind of head-ass, big-time show that people can dive into and feel smarter than other people. It's like your, I don't know, your thinking man's Rick and Morty to a degree, where it's just
I love
there's
that.
more underneath the surface.
I think that's exactly right. We've talked about that in past episodes, the way that it has the structure of a mystery box or puzzle box show that usually brings in a certain kind of viewer, but it also has the look and feel of prestige TV, so it's kind of a perfect melding of the two. Someone it's not the perfect show for, though, is some podcast I listen to, like The Watch from The Ringer, where they just can't help but be naysayers. And I'm curious if you're seeing any other dissenting opinion, because I feel like we talked about this last episode when everyone loves something. And by the way, Chikai Bardo, 9.5 episode rating on IMDb out of 10, the highest of a Severance episode yet.
Damn.
Some people are just trying to do mental jujitsu not to praise the series. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, I've seen it too, and I don't know, I don't want to sit here and be like everyone has to like this show because it's one of those, and I know you're not either. It's just how do you fucking not like this show? Or it's some of the criticisms just feel so odd to me. It's I don't know, you sit there and it just feels why cover it if you're not rocking with it like this? And it just feels very I don't know, surface level, and it's I don't know, if you can sit there and, podcasts like that, I've seen them claim to love, Lost and shit. It's well, this is kind of our generation's Lost right now. Not the same, but it's Mystery Box. You have to take time and dive into it. And if you don't like the mysteries they're building up, then maybe this show's just not for you. And I don't know. It's been I haven't seen too much of that thankfully. I like to listen to a lot of things just to stay a little worldly, but I'll go into my own echo chamber and look at Jessica Lee Gagne's name 20 times in a row.
I feel like with Severance, like it's a show that you need to engage deeply with. You don't need to be on the Reddit boards, but you do need to dive in. It's asking you to do that with the level of detail it has and is displaying. To not dive in, I think you're already putting yourself at a disadvantage not to love the show.
Agree. It's like a job a little bit, but like that's what makes a good show great, in my opinion. Is like
sure
you want to have that deeper connection with the show, and this one is inviting that. So why not do it?
I also just feel that it is the heavyweight show of the moment. I saw this blind item from the Academy Awards that like at the after party, the biggest star at the Vanity Fair party was Britt Lauer, and everyone asking her about Severance, and now that's not. By far, that is not the biggest star at that party, but the interest in her speaks to how resonant Severance is. And
that's awesome.
We got that great, like, viral little clip of Ben Stiller on the red carpet. I don't know if you saw this, where someone yells out to him, "I want to be severed," and he's like, hears it, and he's like, "Oh," and he's like, "Me too sometimes."
Yeah. It was like you saw him like kind of like he was gonna give like the PR like wave and stuff, and then he heard it and he just like clicked. He went like New Yorker Ben was like, me too. It was great.
Ben Stiller, God bless him, he presented at the Academy Awards, had one of the funnier bits in a show of some not funny bits, but this tweet went viral where he tweeted Knicks win, and someone subtweeted, "Dude, you're at the Academy Awards." And he's like, "It's great. Yeah, but the Knicks still won."
He's awesome with that. Like, he just seems like such a good dude. Yeah.
We are entering the home stretch of the show. We are about to talk about episode 8 of season 2. After this one, there are 2 more episodes left. Last season, season 1, it's weird to say last season. It was like 3 goddamn years ago. It was a pretty thrilling wrap-up. Do you think we're launching into that? I mean, at least after this episode, because this is a strange kind of oddball episode. Are you excited for this stretch?
Yeah, this episode kind of made me almost more excited for the home stretch. I feel like that's going to be an unpopular opinion. It did. I think it sets up kind of a whole different corner of the Severance world. And it kind of gives a little bit more weight to different things that maybe were more of a abstract before, which I thought was interesting. And I'm very excited for the final 2. I had thought that maybe the final 3 were going to be crazy, but it really seems that it was just like, all right, 7 was Mark and Gemma's story, 8 was Kobel's story, and Lumen's kind of story, right? And then 8 or 9 and 10 are going to be the combined conclusion of that. So I'm stoked.
So let's get into the episode, season 2, episode 8. It is titled Sweet Vitriol, and it is directed by Ben Stiller. And I haven't talked to you about this episode, so I have no idea how you felt about it. I watched this twice. I did not love it the first time, and the second time around I found myself appreciating it more. 37 minutes long, like the shortest episode in the show's history easily. Almost like an atmospheric Western is what it felt like to me. It features one of my favorite characters, Harmony Kobel, played by Patricia Arquette. And you mentioned the abstract of Severance. And to me, maybe I want to start here, is perhaps the mystery of Kobel was more alluring than the truth of Kobel. Is that unfair of me? Because we get her backstory filled in, and it's not completely filled in. Like, there's still like it's sketches of it and impressions of it, but there is more of it. Yeah, so I'm not sure if I'm like happy to get more of her or not. What do you think about that, and how'd you feel about the episode?
Yeah, I'm a sucker for anything that's like coastal vibes or, that like cold harbor, for, lack of a better word. Like, I like that energy, that aesthetic. Visited Iceland, loved it, would have lived there. Like, I just like that energy. So when I saw we were going to be this episode, I was like, oh, this is just going to be like a me episode. I'm just going to enjoy the aesthetics of this. And then it's Kobel, and I like the whole Lumen mystery. I think that, seeing kind of what they're doing elsewhere and not just in these corporate buildings was very interesting. Maybe I don't love, like, the direction it's going in completely. I'm not sure if I like, we'll get into it, the ending and the reveal of what Kobel is looking for there, but I did really enjoy, the slow burn of the whole episode, like really trying to put together what happened here in this town, and what Lumen can do to the world.
Yeah,
So I thought it was cool.
No, it is cool. It is a mystery. I love the setting. It's gorgeously shot. I'm mostly pro regarding the episode. I think it would have hit a little harder also if we had some more of Kobel seated throughout the season.
Yeah.
She's been sidelined for a while, and now suddenly she's back. And Patricia Arquette's a great enough actress that you're just invested very quickly. But besides her in those first couple episodes, she's been MIA. So really you just have to be like, oh, okay, it's a Kobel episode and I'm diving in, but I would have liked to have had more of her this season.
I agree. I think that might have given it a little bit more weight. Like maybe they could have teased where she was going more, because they kind of did it at the start of, I don't even know what that was, episode like 5 or 4 or whatever. Like,
I
she's
think it was
sitting
like
in
3.
Yeah, so
2.
long time ago. She's like sitting in her car going, north or whatever it looks like, and maybe they could have done a little bit more of that, like her journey getting there, and then once she gets to the town, like that could have been like a cliffhanger of last episode. I don't know, but very, Severance just keeps pushing the barriers of like what this show is, kind of. It's like,
I think
is it this corporate-y office thing? Is it this artistic, relationship-driven show? Is it this mystery box, with following side characters everywhere? It's, kind of pushing the barriers for that.
No, I think what you're hitting on is that this is an episode, however you feel about it, it adds texture to the show. It builds out the world. It feels a certain way. The production design in this episode is just like astounding, because it's definitely not the longest script of the scripts, because not much is said. It is very quiet. It is very atmospheric. So a lot of what has to be communicated is through those buildings in the town, or what the people are like, and the casting of that, and like it's the little things. And I just appreciate that this show makes you care about those details or home in on them specifically.
Sure.
So where did you think we were as this episode opened?
I kind of had no idea. I was just along for the ride. The second it opened,
the car that drives through it.
Exactly. Yeah. My wife was like, "This looks like The Shining." She's like, anything that's like wintry and like windy roads, she's like, Shining.
Smart woman.
Instantly. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool little correlation.
Yeah.
I mean, the second I saw
blue waters, and I was just like, that's a winter tide if I've ever seen a winter tide.
Oh, there you go. I wasn't even thinking winter tide. I was doing the Cold Harbor nonsense. So, there's so much to be said, I think, in the show about like the climate, like the weather, and that it's all just cold and desolate. But then in the flashbacks, you see them having like springtime and happiness. So kind of had no idea where we were. The second it opened up, I was like, this is probably a Kobel episode, and that's where we were. So I don't know. Did you have like an inkling of like, oh, I think I know what this is?
Well, you know what it looked like? You just mentioned Iceland. It looked like Iceland from Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which is a Ben Stiller movie.
Oh, do we know where they filmed this?
I actually do. I found it out. I looked it up. It is Bona Vista in Newfoundland, Canada.
Sick. Okay.
So as that car is winding around, we get that slight variation on the Cure hymn, which always I'm there for. I mentioned like the details being very important to this episode. They're always important in Severance, but to this episode specifically. And because less is going on, I really picked up on the score and how beautiful and kind of creepy it was from Teddy Shapiro. I kind of guessed this is Salt's Neck. We saw that teased, like you mentioned, in an earlier episode, and then we get it here. As you see this town, this understanding of Kobel as like a scrappy underdog takes shape. And we kind of got a hint of that in her standoff with Helly earlier in the season, and the way she's basically calling Helly a Nepo baby. Whether this town was in better shape 30, 40 years ago or not, it's still like an underdog town. And now it's definitely in some real disarray. Yeah. But I like that it sharpened our understanding of Kobel as coming from nothing, basically. Yeah. And we get more of that lore dropped as we go along. So the town is in really bad shape. Kobel was drinking out of a water bottle, and it gave me the sense that like maybe the water's polluted or contaminated, and water's so important to Lumen. God, everyone in this town is like sick and sickly and old, and they're huffing ether. What was just your impression of the setting and the vibes it was giving off?
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. Did you watch True Detective Night Country?
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of gave me some of those vibes. I know that wasn't everyone's like favorite season from that show, but
True.
based on
also
it,
issues
like
with the water there.
yeah, exactly. So like on aesthetic alone, it kind of gave me a little bit of that energy, which
Right.
I loved. I thought that was very eerie, very interesting. And when they were kind of showing the drug user when she was sitting there brushing her teeth, and everything looked so downtrodden, and it just looked dead, like desolate, like you were saying. And instantly, I was just like, oh, this is her hometown, and it's probably gone to shit, and it's probably because of Lumen. I need to know why. And then you kind of see that build out.
The first Lumen we see is like it faded away on the side of a building before we then get the factory. And I don't know if this is the Lumen factory where Kier met Imogen or whatever the hell.
Yeah, they seem to say it was, but it might be part of that, the culty information.
So the episode title, Sweet Vitriol, what that is, it is diethyl ether. And if it's dethyl, diethyl, I don't know. But that's a compound made by distilling ethanol and sulfuric acid, and that's where the episode title comes from. Obviously reference to Kier Egan having an ether factory. It seems to, if not be the drug that people are taking in this town and huffing, at least a variation of it. We meet, I think this guy's name is Hampton. She says it later in the episode, played by James LaGrosse, who's an amazing indie actor. Shout out Good One from India Donaldson, very small movie that he's in. Who do you think this guy was when we're introduced to him?
When we first saw him, I thought that he was going to be her brother, maybe.
Exactly what I thought.
I was like, oh, this is probably her brother. They're having a weird standoff. Like, I was like, I think that's what this is going to be. He's the one who stayed. She's the one who went away.
Right.
And so I thought that was the direction they were going to go in. Doesn't seem like that was the case.
No.
But it seems like they obviously
colleagues, like
forged
very the fire of child labor.
Yeah, this was kind of a crazy. It's like, where else is Lumen doing this? Like, I got some questions.
I mean, ask them. What do you think like they were doing as kids in this town? What kind of line of work was that?
I mean, it's so interesting, and I think they layered it well, where you could tell they really had a past relationship where they were like laughing about like old lines that they would tell them, like you were just saying, they were like, oh, like in the old ether mill, like that's where they met, and they were like all like joking about all the bullshit that Lumen used to peddle them as kids, and then they hit the ether, and they're like, you ready for the 12-hour shift and I was just like, oh my god, they're just like Lumen's just giving drugs to kids to get them through shifts faster. You know what I mean? It's just like, was this their first version, like before chips were around? You know what I mean? Like before the Severance chips existed? Like, is this how they controlled masses for work? Like, I don't know.
No, I think that's an incredible point. I think that's exactly right, which is creepy and strange and awful. But nothing we didn't know already about Lumen. I guess what's more important than the plot in this episode is our understanding of Harmony Kobel psychologically. And we can talk about this once we wrap up the episode. But at this point, are you getting a clearer picture of her psychology? Because it's hard to tell if she loves Lumen or hates it. Or maybe it's both,
I think it's both. It's like it's in her DNA. It's like how it sounds like they came into this town, they exploited the town. She was extremely young when they came in. They sold promises to all the elders and parents and families there that they were going to help, and then they were inducted into this cult, basically, right? And it sounds like these people know nothing else, but Harmony was, special. She was maybe smarter, showed more promise. Sounds like she had to grind for it a little bit more than others. She was a little more scrappy, but then she made it out where others didn't. And so I thought it was interesting. I thought it kind of fits the character, and I think you could tell, like, she has that love-hate because that's all she knew, but she's realizing that maybe all I know isn't the best.
She returns to her home where it seems like she lived with her mother and her aunt. And her aunt is named Sissy Kobel, played by Jane Alexander. Perhaps like the moodiest part of the episode as she visits where her mom was dead and dying and spent her last days. And Harmony kind of just breaks down in tears and takes a little cat nap on on her mother's bed. I love this transition. She takes a pull on her breathing apparatus, which I don't know if it was on or not. This like cloudy smoke turning into the icy waters, and it was just beautiful and very abstract. Within the home, this is where I mentioned the set decoration, like just the details of how she lived her life and her obsession with the tempers, and we see these like paper mache tempers and all these details communicated a lot that her childhood was like any other kid's childhood, except if you are in the Lumen cult.
Yeah, exactly. And that house kind of freaked me out. Like, there's something about like, you know, not just like, you know, a grandparent's house or something, right? But when that's like taken to another level, you can tell like things haven't been touched in like 30 years. And it's just like when they were walking through and like some of the camera angles, like the aunt was creepy already. I was like, oh, is she gonna like close a door and the aunt's gonna be standing there? I'm like, she's freaking me out. Like, what is happening in this house? So I was a little eerie in here for, you know, I felt like claustrophobic.
She's taken to the house by Hampton. She's trying to find something. We don't know what it is. We should mention that call from Devin last episode is going through. Devin is trying to contact Harmony, but Harmony's in her feelings right now, so she can't be bothered.
Do you think that first call that she sees in the car was like when she called her when Ragabi leaves last episode?
But it seems like Devin kept it going after that as well. Harmony's looking for something within the house. What did you think she was looking for? Did you have any idea, or were you just like going with the flow?
I was going with the flow. I was like, it's you know, plot device, I'm sure, but I was hoping I would be interested. Yeah, it was a MacGuffin, but I was accepting it.
Her and Hampton huff some ether, have a little kiss. Nice, good for them.
Yeah.
Not brother and sister. Actually, who knows? I mean, we're watching incest on White Lotus. You never know these days.
Yep, very fair.
What exactly happened? She knows that it has to be in the house, and she just gets a new wave of like, oh, maybe it's here. She heads out into the back shed.
He comes in the house, right, and then they have like a mini conversation. They just like kind of talk about growing up in the factories, and then she has the realization that they would have never thrown out the head, right? Because it's like the head of Kier or whatever. They're like, they wouldn't have thrown this out. So she like goes into the hobbit hole outside.
Right. So she heads out into her hobbit hole. You know, I feel like I get the sense that her mother worked with Lumen, her aunt worked with Lumen, obviously Harmony herself worked at Lumen. Do you think in her dying days her mother was kind of swearing off Lumen, and that's contributing to Harmony's dissatisfaction right now with this company she's devoted her life to?
Yeah,
seems
I think
the aunt is like the devout, but the mother may have been killed by Lumen's like the water supply or something, you know? Yeah.
I mean, they call the aunt a pariah, right? So they're like, she's the true believer. She's the one that can't be changed. And it's probably a fair motivation to say that Kobel is, you know, feeling some type of way about Lumen on top of all the things she's experiencing, but also knowing she probably buried that in her head, knowing like, I'm succeeding, I'm doing well, but she knew that Lumen back at home probably was killing her mother through, like you said, water supply or whatever else, ether, who knows, right? And then we know that, you know, Sissy basically talks shit directly to her even before like the ultimate, you know, confrontation. But before she was just like, oh yeah, you know, she was kind of waning in her believance and, or, you know, believing and everything. So I don't know. It seems like, I think that's a fair motivation that Kobel felt some type of way about her mother dying because of Lumen.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Sissy being, I mean, the actress being a great actress, but also just being creepy AF provides some tenseness to the situation. I think more danger could have been injected into the episode with more of like a ticking clock. And, you know, we are always mistrustful of Sissy, and there's the potential that she's calling Lumen up, which she eventually does. I think it would have been a little more exciting and tense if that was brought in earlier within the episode, that like someone's on Kobel's tail or Drummond's like on the way.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that's a fair point. Like maybe like if halfway through they introduced the element that someone's coming, so that you had that ticking clock, you know, because I kind of like the slow burn exploration of the first bit of it. But if they did like halfway through know that, oh shit, she called someone, or they knew that Drummond was going to be on the way, that if we knew that there was a ticking clock instead of her having all these like sleeping in her mother's bed.
So
and
then
shit.
if she does take the nap, you're like, whoa, don't take the nap. Like, here comes Drummond.
Yeah, exactly.
Harmony wakes up, huffs some ether with Hampton, has a little smooch, heads out to the Hobbit hole, as you mentioned, and the shed, and she's got this fresh motivation. She finds the head of, is it her head or is it Keir Egan's head?
I think it's Keir's.
Bust? I couldn't see. Okay.
Yeah.
So she kind of cracks it open from the bottom and finds this booklet. And I think I've learned by now that she was Wintertide, and we've heard about Wintertide Fellowship from Milchick in regards to Miss Wong. She opens up the booklet, and we see it confirmed. Not only was she Wintertide, she was like the Wintertide of all Wintertides. There's this picture of her posing with Jaime Egan. I gotta tell you, my mind went to a dark place. Like, she's a minor. Did he sleep with her? Is this Helly's mom? Like, was he some type of paternal, abusive type? Like, I just went into all these directions because I guess I watch a lot of movies and shows, but you know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh shit, not only is she a genius, but like something was recognized in her. And then there's so much creepiness with like the spilling of the seed and the sexual abuse. Like, there's just a lot of that here in this show, so I don't think it's an overread. So I was thinking Jaime Egan saw this talent and was like, I will sleep with you.
I think it's fair. I don't know if it's...
That's a cult. That's cult 101, too.
For sure. And I wouldn't be shocked. I didn't go like the sleeping with route or like the, that angle, but I did go with the grooming route. I was just like, whether that goes as far as your theory might go, who knows? But I think definitely, because they were like, don't they pretty explicitly say that like, oh, Jaime Egan like took interest in you, like there's something in there where they're like, oh, they saw the talent in you, and so it's almost definitely they saw that, and we know that they're just like master exploiters at this point. So they probably, whether it's taking that to the 10th degree or just having her under a close watch and then taking all of her designs, I don't, who knows what it might be, but it sounds complex. It sounds a little more complex than we know.
So that's what we find out next, that within the booklet are her designs for basically what Lumen is now, for Severance specifically. That's probably the biggest shoe to drop within the episode, is just learning that Harmony Kobel is the inventor of Severance. I think we've always known her to be very smart, but her strangeness, her like animalistic bizarreness, you're just like, can't trust this woman with a 10-foot pole. But seems like she is the genius behind this whole thing. And, I'm just thinking about this now, but I feel like the town represents Lumen potentially before the Harmony Kobel infusion of her intelligence. Now they're this like rapidly expanding, modernized, technologically advanced company with Severance, but perhaps before she came in with her intelligence and her designs, they were this like old industry kind of thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, like, because it does kind of flip some theories on their head, where it's like, all right, people were thinking like, oh, this whole time they've had crazy technology, maybe they've always been pushing the boundaries of that, and what else do they have? And people are doing all this like bringing people back from the dead stuff and doing all this reincarnation stuff, but maybe they don't have any of that. Like they don't know, they might not understand like anywhere near the amount. And it kind of ties back into Kobel in the first season, where they were like, oh, reintegration is not possible. She's like, fuck you, yeah it is, I made it, like I know like I know that it could be like possible, like they're my design. So it adds a little more texture to that.
Right. Remind me and the listeners what she said in season 1 regarding that. We're trying to like push her out already in season 1, right?
Yeah, and it kind of, so I think it's going to be very interesting going back and rewatching the season 1 again after all this new context, where you're going to see that like there's always some, it seems like they have her around because they feel a little bit threatened. They don't want her to go off the deep end. Like it seems like they want her there, but they don't want her to have too much say. They're probably scared of her overextending and wanting more power and wanting more like a seat at the table kind of thing. And we see in season 1 with Petey's reintegrating, she's basically says like her and Milchick are thinking about it, and they're like, oh, he's reintegrating, and the board is like, oh, no, it's not possible. And she digs the chip out of his head at his funeral because she knows it's possible. So yeah, I think that now it's not just like, oh, she's being a soldier. she's kind of not just the soldier. She's kind of the creator of it. So it just adds a texture. She's the creator without any pull anymore, which, you know, it's like, I don't know. I feel like you've done the Frankenstein's monster comparison a little bit. Prometheus, yeah.
To the humans,
Yeah, so I think it adds cool texture.
That's so interesting, and it is true. Like, you could almost rewatch the show with, like, the Kobel edit and see a whole new story.
The Kobel edit, I love that.
I would watch that. I mean, this is her design. My design!
We're sickos, man. We'll watch anything.
We had to get a Patricia Arquette just freak out line reading.
Release the Kobel cut. Yeah,
she always puts a little extra sauce on everything. I appreciate that as a performer.
And it fits in this show, too, because of how theatrical, like, the culty, like, Lumen vibes are. I think, like, maybe it felt a little off early on, but now that you know that they talk like that, and it's funny going to a town of where, you know, Sissy, the true believer, she also talks like that. It's like, oh, they're just culty and bringing this shit wherever they want.
Sissy tries to burn those designs because they would bring shame upon Lumen, and everything's in service of Jamie Egan and the Egans. But Harmony snatches them back. Hampton, you know, lets her rush ahead while someone's on her tail. We assume it's Drummond or something. But again, like, I wish that was a little more here in the episode.
Yeah.
But Harmony hits the road. Rock music starts playing. Finally picks up a call from Devin. You've been, like, the least trustful of Rigavi.
Yep.
And Devin's like, yeah, he's reintegrating with Rigavi. And I forget what Harmony's exact line is. Like, the translation for, you know, the common folk is like, you fucking idiot with that.
I think she just says,
woman.
Like, she just goes, Rigavi. Like, in, like, the way she says it, it's like, you know that she's just, like, shaking her fist at the air, like, that idiot, you know, like, we think that Rigavi's so smart. She's the doctor, but, like, maybe Kobel was the right call the whole time. She's the creator of this shit. You know what I mean?
I did say that second episode. You know,
you did.
I said this. We should maybe trust Harmony. Also interesting because we thought that might happen with Milchick, but perhaps it is Harmony who is going to be helpful and maybe the late breaking hero of the season.
Yeah, maybe
she gets on the phone with Mark and, like, got a little tingle. I was like, good. Like, this is maybe who Mark needs to win this battle.
It gives you a little that, like, team up.
Yeah, it's because it's rare, and we haven't seen it go in this positive way before. It's only been her trying to, I don't know, do reconnaissance on Mark and freaking you out. So, were you amped? Like, are you now pumped for these final 2 episodes, and you think that Harmony's going to be helpful in, like, winning this war, or at least winning this battle in this larger war of the show?
I think the final 2 episodes are going to bang. I got really excited at the end. Like you said, once, like, the rock music kind of hits and, like, he gives her the truck and Hampton, I forget what he says. Is he just like, I'm pretty sure he's like, come tame these tempers or some shit. I was just oh, yeah, bro, let's go. Like, it's just like, it was like the right vibe. It's like a little corny, but it's a little like, yeah, I needed that. Like, it was like a fun.
Right. And that could be a sacrifice. He could be dead.
Take my car. I'm not going to need it because I'm going to die. Like, I'm holding this off for you. And it kind of seems like that town's journey is done. It's kind of like helped propel the story forward. So, yeah, I thought that was cool. And I think it really sets up. It gave me that little bit of, like, you know, that it sounds stupid, but that, like, superhero, like, funness when she's just like, you hear Mark on the phone. It kind of has that uplifting music. And you're just like, oh, they're about to team up. Like, this is going to be fun. It's like
go time.
It's ready. Like, we've wanted this forever, and we might have thought it might have been Milchick, but maybe Milchick leans into the darker side of things with how disappointed he's been, and then maybe Kobel goes to the opposite side, and it kind of seems like that's what we're doing. And it sounds like maybe my goat Devin was right the whole time. I don't know.
Your what? Sorry.
My goat Devin. She was she should have just called Kobel right from the get-go. Like, she was not wrong to think to do that.
Oh, goat! I'm sorry.
Greatest of all time.
No, I know. There's too many goats in the show, you know. And you know, there's a
layer. I'm speaking in layers, you know. Yeah, Rickon as a goat. I don't know. I need to stay off Reddit.
Fake theory. I hope people don't take that seriously. Well, Rickon's amazing at climbing. Rickon is a goat. Good stuff.
That's great, actually. Yeah. Scaling walls.
Did this episode work for you overall? I think we have some hiccups within it, but I feel like a unique and special episode in a really good season of TV. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was cool. I'm a sucker for lore and world building, and even if it's not the best thing in the world. Like anytime one of my favorite shows kind of does a spin-off and shows us a background of something that adds weight to some other storyline or character, I'm always into that. I always think that's a swing you should take to add more context to the main plot line we're following. So I was into it. The aesthetic was something that I'm always into. It attracted me right from the get-go. Kobel's a cool character. So I was rocking with it. Could there have been more of a ticking time bomb? You know, maybe could there have been a little bit more exploration of this town or something? Perhaps. But I think it was it did what I needed.
There probably wasn't more exploration because it was already a risk to do this like slow atmospheric kind of episode, especially when fans are expecting propulsive plot. That's a risk, and so maybe that explains the episode length. We're already so invested, you could give us more as well.
I kind of like that they went with the shorter route too, where it was like, we know, it's kind of like them saying like, we know that you what you want. Let us tell this one final like short story a little bit. It's going to make it so much. It's like we always say, it's like these slower burn episodes going to make the payoff so much better. And it kind of seems like we've been saying that a handful of times this season, but we have had a lot revealed. I think it's going to be very interesting to go back at the end of season 2 and compare it to the questions we might have had at the end of season 1 and be like, holy shit, look at all we've learned this season about Lumen, about these characters, about how the chips work, about what's going on underneath the surface. So I think it's been a great season so far, and the final 2 episodes, I think they're going to be sick.
That was my favorite thing about what you said about this episode, just the recontextualizing of Harmony Kobel. I'm just thinking in my head to so many mysterious line readings she has and things she says that now have an explanation, especially in regard to her relationship with Lumen and how they treat her, whether it's Helena in the beginning of the season or when she's on the phone with the board in the first season. You know, when they're disrespecting her, now we're like, hold on, this woman invented your friggin' business.
Yep.
Have some respect.
I agree. With the turn she's going to make, I think they kind of had to do a little bit of a story about whether it was interweaving this with another episode and maybe other plot lines, but they were like, you know what, we just add an extra 15 minutes to it. Let's do a full, 40-minute episode and pack her story all in one, so when she does turn, it makes sense and the viewers are stoked for it, like I was.
Yep. All right, well, Sean, we're heading into the final 2 episodes. Thank you for coming on to cover Season 2, Episode 8. See you next week. Anything else you want to add?
Awesome episode. Had fun with it. I like that they keep pushing the barriers. It might not always be in that severed floor, but it always does feel like Severance somehow. They always tie it together.
Well said. All right, thanks, Sean.